My mom always said, like, if you want to know where someone's going, you look at their feet, not their mouth. And so for like the first decade, like we didn't have a website, like we didn't talk about any of the things we did. We didn't use terms like target population. Like we didn't do any of that. Like, no one really knew we did any of that kind of stuff just because we wanted to make sure that we're not doing it to be exploitative. Like we're not doing it to like elevate others. Like it was just something we wanted to do. And we wanted to work with cool people. We wanted to work with people who we wanted to be inclusive. But we wanted to actually be doing it and not just be talking about it. So we really didn't talk about it for like a decade.
This is Evolve CPG's Brands for a Better World podcast, featuring purpose-driven leaders who not only believe in better, but actively pursue it. That's better products, better brands, and better leadership for a better world. Thanks to you, our listeners, this podcast is now ranked in the top 10% of all podcasts globally. Let's not stop there, though. You can help us reach more people by taking a moment to leave us a rating or review, which is critical for podcast algorithms, and by sharing your favorite episodes with your network. The more people we reach, the more good we can bring about in this world. If you work in the industry, you can also join our online community where we're going further, faster, together at community.evolvecpg.com. I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder and creative director of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow and scale their impact. On this episode, we're speaking with Matt Kreutz, CEO of Firebrand Artisan Breads, about why he built a company to end the cycle of recidivism and homelessness, how he made his employees owners and secured the long-term mission of the company, why he feels the service industry deserves more respect, and I agree, and much more.
My name is Matt. I am the CEO and founder of Firebrand Artisan Breads. We're based in Oakland, California, and we make delicious breads and pastries that we distribute throughout the Bay Area. And we focus on people who are hiring people who are formerly homeless or formerly incarcerated.
Awesome. Thanks for carving out some time to chat, Matt. I'm excited to dig into this and share the story a little bit more. One of the first things that really struck me when I learned about you and Firebrand was the really bold and simple statement about your mission on the website, where you say that you don't hire people to bake bread, you bake bread to hire people. And it's just so bold and simple, beautiful mission. I love it. Yeah. Where did that drive to build a business aimed at ending the cycle of recidivism and homelessness come from?
So it's kind of been like an evolving mission for us, you know. I mean, starting with personally from me, my mom experiencing kind of issues with the criminal justice system and having kind of fallen on hard times as a family and having to do things that she wasn't proud of, that ended kind of in her going to jail for a bit. And just kind of coming from that experience, seeing a lot of people growing up kind of make bad decisions or kind of have to make bad decisions because of things foisted on them or lack of opportunities. And then seeing kind of what that does to people even after they get out of prison or jail, and seeing kind of them going into kind of third-class citizens and having to deal with a whole web of things that kind of permanently put them behind the eight ball. And you kind of think, oh, well, they're out. Now the sky's the limit. And really now they're kind of 50 steps behind. Now they could be massively in debt. They could kind of have a lot of fines. They now have a strike on their record. They now have lack of job, lack of housing. A lot of public services are not now open to them. And so kind of seeing what kind of that does to people, we wanted to kind of Firebrand to see what we could do to affect that change. You know, we were kind of homeless here for the first kind of about a year there at Firebrand. We were sleeping at our bakery there, our first bakery, and then showering at the Y, which is now across from our retail cafe, ironically. But we were showering there, just trying to make Firebrand work. So just kind of a combination of all those things. We wanted to see how can we use a business to really affect change. You know, looking at people like, you know, Richelieu Dennis, you know, with Shea Moisture, who's kind of like, you know, he has a mission with a business, not a business with a mission. And how can we kind of take that idea and really kind of grow that every year to kind of have a little more and more impact every year, kind of starting with our hiring practice, which we've always done for almost 15 years, just what's now called open hiring. We didn't know Graceland Bakery existed at the time. But it really just was, a name on a clipboard. And if you want a job, you come in and we'll give you a shot. No resumes, no cover letters, no background checks, no formal job interviews. Just kind of come in and can you do the job? Do you want to learn? Do you want to be a part of the team? And that's really how that kind of started. And just every year kind of adding more and more to that as we've grown. And we've got about 100 people now. And yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it seems like when I ask people kind of where some of their passion originally came from, some of these stories start from personal experience. Like,
sure.
For example, maybe people who went on to be a doctor or to focus on fitness or nutrition had like unhealthy people in their family, or someone like, Mike Fata, who was on the show from Manitoba Harvest. He himself was really overweight and decided he needed to get his life together and got healthy, and then found health foods and founded a hemp food company and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So similar to this, like you having personal experience with what this is like with people, loved ones, or people who are out there struggling with the after effects of having been incarcerated or something like that, and seeing how much of a struggle it is for them. It makes it so much more real, and you understand the problem better, as opposed to, a bunch of people getting together in a boardroom who've never had any struggles in their life, deciding they want to make an impact and picking some community that's being affected and deciding they're going to go help them. Often those solutions come in like white knight kind of solutions, and they don't really understand the problem, and they almost insult the people more than they help them. Right. But I think when that mission comes from personal experience with yourself or your loved ones, your family, your friends, whatever, you come at it from such a more pure angle, and you're able to build something that works better. I think so. That's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think we my mom always said, like, if you want to know where someone's going, you look at their feet, not their mouth. And so for the first decade, we didn't have a website, we didn't talk about any of the things we did. We didn't we didn't use terms like target population. We didn't do any of that. No one really knew we did any of that kind of stuff, just because we wanted to make sure that we're not doing it to be exploitative. We're not doing it to elevate others. It was just something we wanted to do. And we wanted to work with cool people. We wanted to work with people who we wanted to be inclusive. But we wanted to actually be doing it and not just be talking about it. So we really didn't talk about it for a decade. And just tried to find best practices, learn, do the best we can, before we even discussed it. Growing up, I grew up in the punk rock community, and it was always about being inclusive and about bringing in people who didn't get chances, opportunities, who were overlooked, and then combining that with the food service industry, where it's first generation immigrants, people who are generally kind of shit on, all the time. And then how can we kind of bring all those people into the fold to actually build a bakery of this kind of whole population of people, we always say, we're kind of the bad news bears of bakeries, we're kind of just this ragtag crew. And we've always maintained that, even 15 years later, for better or for worse. We've always kind of maintained that and kind of embraced that idea of hey man, we're a bakery, but we're really in the people business, and we're really all about people. And if we're about people, people are messy. Just inherently, people are messy. And if you're going to be about people, you have to embrace that level of chaos that comes with that, and not try to stamp that out of people. And so we've always kind of tried to create a culture that the circle always gets bigger, and the circle changes all the time. As new people come in, we don't want you to come into Firebrand and be conform to our box. It's no, come in and then see how the box can kind of morph and change based on what you add to it and what you bring to it. And that's kind of crazy and chaotic. And, I don't know if that's smart or not, but it's just kind of what we've done for 15 years almost. And just how do we just make that circle bigger and kind of dynamic?
Yeah. I feel like I just mentioned this on a recent podcast, so for regular listeners, I feel a little repetitive, but it reminds me of something that I kind of wrote on my desk a little while back. It's flipping this idea that it's not personal, it's business, right? I think a lot of people say that to justify layoffs or keeping low wages or doing all this other kind of stuff. They're like, hey, it's not personal. I would love to help you, but I've got to run a business here. Yeah. Whereas what you're doing, what I think makes more sense is it's not just business. It's always personal, because whether you're working with another business or an individual, it's all people, right? And whatever you do affects those other people. And in theory, if you take good care of your people, they'll take good care of your business and take good care of your customers, et cetera. So it's a good virtuous cycle. Whereas when you just do it's just business, you're going to, push people away from the business. Nobody's going to be loyal to you. They're going to jump ship as soon as a better offer comes around, or, whatever else. There's just all these negative outcomes of treating people like numbers on a spreadsheet rather than human beings.
Yeah. And I think that's a pretty easy way to go, right? Just to be like, hey, well, it's business. I don't have to give a shit. I mean, it's kind of like a chicken shit idea, but it's a third of their day is here at Firebrand. And then it's like we always say, if we're going to terminate somebody, if we're going to let them go, that is one of the most serious conversations we have at Firebrand. You damn well better take that seriously. You have to treat them with respect. You have to look them in the eye. You have to do, we have this whole kind of group of things you have to do. Our side of the street needs to be very, very clean on this issue. That person needs to walk into the room and be very clear why they're there before they got there. There can be no mystery. There can be no doubt. It has to be crystal clear. Yeah. Because we take it seriously. Because not only if you're trying to get back on your feet, or you were homeless, now you got a job. Man, we got to that has to be treated with a massive amount of respect. And it doesn't mean that we can't be a business, and it doesn't mean that we can't have rules, and it doesn't mean that we can't have standards. We are getting better as a business about creating standards and doing all of that kind of stuff. But it also means that you have to be very clear about what you're doing to this person. And it doesn't mean the decision has to change. It just means that you have to be aware of that. It's why I know every single person's name here. I always know things about them. I know their kids. I know, I try to get to know people the best I can at having 100 people, when it's but I have to know the person, because if something goes wrong, I need to know what's going on, how that's going to affect their life. And we have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, whenever we've had to let people go at Modern Species, even though it's a different situation and it's easier for them to just go get another job, we still understand that it's a big blow. So what we've typically done is say, hey, this obviously isn't working out for one reason or another. Maybe it's the job isn't a fit, the type of work isn't a fit, the hours, whatever it is, isn't a fit. So why don't you take the next 3 months and look for another job? If you find another job, we won't fire you. If you don't find another job, we'll fire you so you can get unemployment. Yeah. But we just give them those options because it affects people, right? Not everyone has the luxury of being in some high-paid tech job where you get quote unquote downsized, and that means you get a severance of 5 years of a regular person's salary. Yeah. You get to just semi-retire for a little while you figure out what you want to do with your life. For most working people, you let them go, that means they might lose their apartment. They might struggle to find another job because now they've got a firing on the record. There's just so many things that snowball from that situation. So I love that.
There's also pride and of they have to go back to their families, their loved ones, and tell them they got fired or let go, or that's also a big blow. There's pride in work, there's pride in effort, there's all of those things matter in someone's day. So it's beyond just there's money, and yes, there's all those things that are massively important. It's also a shot to your ego that which isn't our job to manage, but you have to be aware of it.
Right. Yeah. And especially because it's not always that you're getting let go because you're a bad person or something. You're getting let go because you and the job weren't the best fit. So it's not necessarily a judgment on you, but to your point, it can be a massive blow to somebody's identity, especially if this is part of them trying to rebuild their identity and then they get let go, so that makes sense. Yeah. And another thing I like about what you were saying is that you just kind of did the work for a long time before talking about it, which I think is kind of the opposite of greenwashing. Yeah. You see a lot of big corporations like the second they decide to do some sort of social give back thing, there's press releases, they're talking about it on big stages, they're
Yeah.
putting out ad campaigns, they've created a new logo and trademarked whatever
Yeah.
this thing is that they do now. Like they just go all in to let everyone know all this good they're doing. And it comes across as inauthentic often because it's like, well, great. So you've done this like once and you just started it and you haven't been doing it before. And like, how does this make sense for your brand? But for a company like yours, by the time you start talking about it, people have seen you walking that talk for so long that it's like, well, of course, yeah, we know you've been doing that. And now it's much more clear because you just put that really brilliant headline on your website or something like that, So
yeah, and we didn't even like do that until we literally changed our corporate structure to like enshrine it into our corporate structure. So like by the time we started talking about it, it was something we legally had to do.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And in fact, that was going to be one of my later questions, but we can jump a bit into that right now. So I know last we were talking, you were telling me a bit about that corporate structure and how your purpose is baked in, to use a little pun here, baked into the corporate structure. I think what you said you ended up shifting to is a trust model. Can you explain how and why you settled on that?
Yeah, so that's got a little bit of attention lately because Patagonia has transitioned into a similar structure. So we were fundraising, and we were looking, it was our first time doing equity after like 12 years or so. And so talking to various CPG groups, private equity firms, and we were kind of like just not finding like a really good fit for the company. I wanted to retain ownership of the company, and I wanted to like retain the mission of the company and expand the mission of the company, not only just retain it. And so we were kind of looking for like what would be a good solution for that. And being in the service industry, we've always kind of asked ourselves every year, like, what's a good job? Like, what is a good job? Like, if we say we're providing a good job, what's the definition of that? And so that's kind of morphed and expanded every year. And so we were kind of thinking, well, how do we give equity to staff? Right? Like, because most of our employees don't care about like owning 0.001% of Firebrand, but it's like, how do we make that check fatter? How do we incentivize them and give them education to make the check fatter? And so we kind of looked at co-op structures, and just growing up, like I said, in the kind of punk rock world, for me, co-op was just like, it just seemed like a nightmare for me personally, not in the real world, just me personally. We looked at ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans, but we're looking at kind of what Organically Grown Company did, which is a company based in Oregon that was an ESOP and transitioned to a trust. And we didn't want the threat of a takeover at any point. And under an ESOP, right, once you cross certain thresholds, like you might be vulnerable to a takeover. So we didn't want that. We wanted the company to be sustainable over the long run, protect the mission, while providing flexibility to be able to fundraise. And so we came up on this idea of a trust structure based on kind of what Organically Grown Company had done. And so we basically, what that meant was functionally, I had 100% ownership of the company. I gave 51% of the company to a trust, which is a third party. I like to think about it like a lockbox. So all of those 51% are put in the lockbox and can't be sold. So the company ownership always stays with that trust. We can't have another majority owner of the company. It also means that all profits of the company have to be reinvested in the company and for the people who are involved in the company. As part of that, too, we transitioned to a public benefit corporation. And that public benefit corporation, along with the trust, enshrine that we have a set of purposes in our charter. So that ranges from open book management teaching, profit sharing, the hiring of formerly homeless, formerly incarcerated, fair and equitable purchasing practices. Like, there's a whole litany of stuff that we are now legally accountable to that can never change. One thing we all wanted to is Firebrand's been very like me-centric for a long time. And we really wanted to be like, if I get hit by a bus, like, what happens? Like, if I get hit by a bus, does the mission change? If I get hit by a bus, does the corporate structure change? Like, I didn't want any of that to happen. Like, I wanted to give the company flexibility, obviously, but we wanted it to be like where that mission can never change. that can never be changed by anybody, no matter who you are. Even me at this point, I can't change it. And so we also wanted it to be like, just make sure that the future of the company was always kind of safe and secure and not dependent on me alone. So we also kind of democratized some of our decision making. We had employees that are on the trust stewardship committee, which governs that trust. We have community members on that board. We also have a regular kind of like operating board, a typical kind of management board, which includes an employee on that board as well. And so try to kind of democratize a lot of the decision making, and then using open book management to like kind of help teach people like, hey, here's how we run the business. Here's the strategy of the business. Here's the goals of the business. Like, here's what you could do to affect that change. And if you do, then here's the profits that then can be reinvested back to you personally. So trying to kind of like create that kind of circular loop for people. Yeah, not the easiest structure to explain, I'll say that. But, but it is, I think, for us, kind of provided the best like growth flexibility, mission protection. And that was kind of that's what we were going for.
That's cool. And I love hearing about it because I've always thought maybe I would do something similar with Modern Species when I'm starting to think about future exits at some point, but maybe even before then is I'd rather give it to the team than sell it to some other agency or something that's just going to destroy it and kill the mission and water it down, etc. But to your same point, like co-op models and ESOPs and stuff have some cons that go along with them.
And they have some great things too. Like, I never like to kind of shit on any form of like employee ownership. I think with which a trust is considered, I think they're all great in their own right. It's just a matter of like, what's your goals? What's your mission? Like, what's the goal for you personally? What's the goal for the company? And then finding a structure. For some people, co-op works amazing. For some people, an ESOP works amazing. Like, it really depends on what your goals are as a company. But I mean, there's any one of those three solutions can be awesome.
Yeah. But like you said, the ESOP, you can get forced into a buyout or whatever, like what happened with New Belgium, who was also pretty sure an ESOP, and they got forced into selling, right? So
100%.
Things like that happen, or co-ops, there's complications with, decision making and running things through the board and so on and so forth. All business models have pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
But I liked hearing about this because this one was a new one to me. But question, you said 51% gets distributed to the employees. How was the percentage distributed? Was it based on how long they've been with the company or something like that? Like, or did everyone get an equal percentage, or is everyone just, how does that work?
Yeah. So 51% goes to a trust. So that trust is the people who own that stock. The people. So it's not really people, it's an entity that owns 51%. Okay. They are the representatives of the staff. So any profit sharing, like they administer it, like they're the ones who are in charge of that. And the way that will work is that if you're 100 employees, like everyone gets distributions equally after like 6 months of being at Firebrand. So that's kind of like how that will work. Cool. But the trust just distributes that out. So after investors are paid, and then profits are there, we pay all of our debts, taxes, liabilities, and anything we have left gets distributed evenly across the employees. I'll be considered one employee, so like I get the same distribution that a dishwashers get. So it would be spread out.
Cool. Okay, and then the 49% that you retained is where you could still kind of play with investors and offer them some equity from that slice, but the 51% is locked, and no investor, to your point, can ever come in, own a majority, and decide to change things.
Yeah, and we can add more. The goal is kind of over, the next 5-10 years is to like continue to add shares back to that 51% and grow that 51% until it's eventually 100%. But we kind of, one step at a time, kind of grow the company so that at the end of the day, like I said, it's 100% in the trust. So you could add to the trust, but you just can't take away.
Okay, cool. Love it. So beyond trying to create meaningful work for folks who might struggle a little bit more than others to find work, and now giving them kind of part ownership in the company, I know you also do other things to try to help kind of support their personal growth or give them, whatever benefits you can offer, et cetera. Can you talk a little bit more about all the ways you kind of support the team members too?
Sure. So we moved into this new space here in Alameda behind me. And as part of that, we opened up a worker resource center here, which is staffed by a group called Five Keys. And Five Keys kind of works inside prisons, outside prisons to help try to provide employment, within 90 days. And that's our kind of like our sweet spot of where we try to find impact, which is kind of the most difficult time period, but it's the most critical time period. Is like within 90 days of being released. Like that's where we also try to kind of hire folks from, and people who kind of also hire people who are formerly incarcerated. Kind of do different models. Some people will only hire after a year, or so we try to do within 90 days of being released because that's like the hardest time period for folks. So with the Five Keys staffs it, and we also out of there we do GED classes. We're going to start ESL classes. We work with a couple of nonprofits to do like financial literacy classes. A big problem is trying to get people into the banking system because most people don't have IDs, right. Social security cards, they don't have bank accounts. We have a lot of people who are in shelters and they're carrying cash under their pillows. And so it's like, how do we get you into a banking relationship as quickly as possible? And so we work with what's called like focus cards and then try to get people into a bank, as quickly as possible and away from cash, away from, Sharky kind of Western Union kind of check cashing places, and just try to get people as quickly as we can into the banking system. And then, like I said, with the open book management, just teaching them how to read the financials and run the business just like we do.
Nice. That's awesome. That's beautiful stuff because I think there's so many companies trying to take better care of their employees. Some of them do it through, well above minimum wage. Like I know Dr. Bronner's, they're always posting that like they keep posting raises and going above and above and above minimum wage, or they do things like, as soon as any laws get changed, like I know that they just started including psychedelic mental health treatment coverage as part of their healthcare, since that's a big part of their brand. But there's so many different ways to take care of employees. I just love hearing all the ways that people do it in a way that makes sense for them and their team, right? Like Modern Species, because we're constantly evolving. Like part of what we do is we just actively encourage and fund personal development, professional development kind of stuff, and we try to sync up with each other and hold each other accountable for trying that big idea, or creating space for them to go write their book or create their blog or learn some new skill or evolve into a different role in the company or something like that, because that's the way we can support them beyond flexible hours and all that kind of stuff. But every when companies create their own benefits package in a way that makes sense for their business, I love that, rather than just we just offer the standard, here's the checklist of 5 things we do and then we're done.
So it also depends on your company goals, right? It's like we're a food business, right? A bakery, and so it's like we try to provide. Our goal is that we have an average of a living wage standard at Firebrand. So we use the MIT scale. No children. What's the living wage standard? And that's what we go by. And we do free healthcare through Kaiser, dental, vision. We do that stuff as well. But we also were looking at we can't just always be paying more and more. Like as a business, there's only so much people are going to pay for a croissant. Like this is what it is. But it's how do we? But for our group here, it's a lot of times people have a hard time just getting to work, and so it's how can we affect commuter benefits? We looked at putting a daycare center in here, and just became too crazy of an idea. But we looked at how can we affect people coming here? Because that's kind of a lot of times people are I can't get the bus here. Can we get you a Clipper card for free? Yeah, Alameda does that. They provide free Clipper cards. Let's do that. How can we kind of look beyond things that are here in these 4 walls, and how can we help you get here? Because again, we try to look at people in a holistic fashion. They got kids, they got relatives, depending on whatever their situation is, and they need flexible schedules, and so we're massively flexible with our schedules. So it's just how do we kind of look at people's whole lives and try to lean in the best we can.
Yeah, it makes more sense that way because you could offer a benefit that nobody takes advantage of because it's irrelevant to them, or
Yep.
you can figure out what they actually need and
Yeah.
give them those benefits. And like you
Yeah.
said, most
No.
companies can't just, unless you're a tech company with millions of dollars just being dumped on you every second, you don't necessarily, you can't always just give salary as a benefit, right? But you can give other things. You can give flexibility, you can get clipper cards, you can connect them to
Yeah.
resources. There's other things you can do, and I think that's what smaller businesses or businesses that have to actually turn a profit,
Yeah.
that those businesses have to find more creative ways to create great benefits for their team.
Yeah, and like it depends on, again, it depends on who their employees are. Like for our team, like giving people space to write their book like isn't going to be relevant to them. But like, other things will be. Like we looked into like the daycare thing. The reason it didn't work, well, one of many reasons it didn't work beyond financial was that like we to make it financially sustainable, we'd basically need to open it up to the rest of the island of Alameda. And then so we'd be basically providing daycare to people who like could definitely afford premium daycare and didn't necessarily like need it from us, but we're providing it at the almost at the exclusion of our employees. And then like most of our employees are paying grandma or their sister or their family member like $400 a month. And now I'm saying, oh, we have this beautiful daycare center and it's $2,400 a month because that's what we need to charge. That's what's going rate, and no one can afford it. Like when they're used to their family members, not some stranger watching their kid. And so it just became like a mismatch for our employees.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's all about just staying in touch with your employees and knowing with whether or not what you're offering is working or not, right?
Yeah.
But I think, again, a lot of companies just have their standard benefit list and they don't care whether or not you like those benefits. It's just their package that they offer. But anytime you can actually talk to the team and see what's working for them, what's not working for them, like why not adjust? Just get creative with your benefits and make it work for people. Again, it just goes back to it's not business, it's personal, right? If you treat people like humans and not numbers on a spreadsheet, then there's lots of different ways you can help them. You just have to get creative.
Yeah.
So as I was digging into a little bit of your background, I noticed that you found your way into food at age 14. You ended up working at a bakery. And then you said you fell in love with food from that day forward. So what is it about bread and pastries that really pulled you in versus any other type of food? And what all is Firebrand doing these days for anyone out there who's like their mouth is watering, they're getting excited about what you make? Let's paint that picture a little bit more.
Well, I was 14. I needed to get a job. My dad had left a couple of years before that. My mom was trying to support the house, the family on her salary. And so I needed to get a job just to keep us afloat a little bit. And so in Virginia, where I grew up, you could get a job. I think it was like you're only allowed like 25 or 30 hours, but I got a full-time 40-hour job at 14, on the day like my birthday, at a little place called Bagel Buddies in Virginia, and was just like not even doing his food, just like scrubbing floors, washing dishes, taking out the trash, but just being around. I think what I fell in love with was the service industry. I fell in love first with like the people in the service industry, and the idea of service was like a total match for me. I think that's really what I fell in love with first. And then it was like, oh, you can cool create things, and then started with food. And then in high school, we had a trade school within my high school, and culinary was one of the options. And so when I was a junior, I took that. And then only one or two of us was really interested in bread. And so we were kind of allowed to they're like, cool, someone wants to do bread later. And so we were able to kind of just do it on our own. And I just then kind of fell in love with bread specifically, kind of around the 17, around there. But it was just really kind of love working with my hands. I love creating things. I love bread and pastry are very I don't think of them as people oh, it's art. I think of it as manual labor. It's very much endless repetitive tasks. You're doing that one baguette shape, you're doing 1,000 of them or 500, whatever you're doing of them. It's kind of endless. It's perfecting something on a minute scale, a little by little every single day. And you're just kind of steadily getting better. And it's very nerdy and awesome in that way. It's no one
Yeah.
notices, but like like I made this baguette just this much better, and like oh, like that was like so awesome for me. I loved that,
Yeah.
so I think like that was really appealing to me as well. And so, and I love the manual labor aspect of it. It's a very physical job um, as well. And so I think, but started getting kind of into the science of it kind of in my late teens. But yeah, that was kind of the appeal to it. And Firebrand now, we started just doing breads, wood fired breads down in kind of at the border of Emeryville and Oakland, and then moved into a cafe in 2015 where we started doing pastries, a kitchen, kind of expanded our bread program. And now we kind of focus 50-50, breads, pastries, laminated stuff, enriched breads like brioche and rolls and deli rolls. So kind of expanded our repertoire is what we do. Started doing sliced breads about a year and a half ago in stores, which is a big leap for us. Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay, so you have the one cafe, is that right?
We have one cafe in downtown Oakland, and then in May, theoretically, we'll have another cafe at our bakery here in Alameda.
Gotcha. And that cafe, I assume there's like coffee plus bread plus pastries, and then is there like sandwiches or salad, like other kind of prepared foods, or does it just stick to the pastries and coffee?
Yeah, so we do coffee, pastries. We do breakfast and lunch in Oakland. And then here in Alameda, we'll do the coffees, bread, pastry, but we'll also do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So this is going to be like the one in Alameda will be kind of more food focused, more meal focused. We have a couple of breweries as neighbors, and so we're going to be providing food for them as well. So we'll have pizzas and other kind of sandwiches and stuff like that. So kind of a much more like expanded hours and expanded food program here in Alameda.
Gotcha. Okay. And then for the folks listening who aren't in California, the best way they can try some Firebrand is going into finding your sliced breads in stores. So can you talk a little bit about that sliced bread program and where people might find that?
Well, right now, only in Northern California, but working on expanding that out here in the next. Hopefully, the goal is by like middle of the year. We'll be expanding kind of down in Southern California and down up in the Pacific Northwest into Rocky Mountain a little bit. Kind of expanding those sliced breads out. So those are 100% organic, sprouted grain breads. We're also adding like a cinnamon raisin bread that'll be upcycled with the regrain folks, and then doing another kind of like white sourdough product, which is like going to be really cool because we take our old sourdough bread and then soak it and add it back into the new bread as a way of kind of reducing waste. And so that's a really cool project we're excited about as well.
Nice. So. That's cool. So for maybe people who are out there but in the sliced bread market might come up with this association, which of course I did too, which is the Dave's Killer Bread, which is fairly widely distributed, makes healthier, like whole grain breads. I'm pretty sure they're all organic, or if not, at least some are mostly organic. But also a somewhat similar story where Dave himself, I think, had spent some time in prison and when he got back out, wanted to do more good in the world. And I think his family had a bakery or something like that. So he kind of talked his way into helping out with the bakery, and then started shifting that model to a similar kind of, I don't know if they're as open hiring kind of model as you are, but it's another kind of model where they try to create jobs for formerly incarcerated and stuff as well. So I feel like that's kind of analogous or whatever, or similar to kind of the model that you're building, but with a different product line. I mean, you're starting to get into sliced breads, but with that said, how do you feel about that association with Dave's Killer Bread? Is that a positive association, or do you feel like what you're doing is different in some way? I haven't had them on the show, so I'm curious what you think of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're different in terms of like our product mix is different. Like our mission is definitely different. I think our mission is like baked into our corporate structure. We're an employee-owned company. Like we have we both share the focus of hiring people who are formerly homeless or incarcerated. They focus on people who have been out much later much longer,
Okay.
than us, which is, not good or bad, it just is. Whereas we focus on those 90 days, they typically focus on like at post 1 year being
Okay.
out. But yeah, different. It was similar, kind of like they had a bakery before that transitioned to sliced breads, so there is some similarities there. But I also kind of like I've tried to like really have a strong philosophy of here. Like I'm not a hater. Like if you've been around for 30, like Acme is the big dog over here in the Bay Area, right? So it's like, hey man, when we're around for over 30 years, we'll start talking shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when Firebrand celebrates its 30-year anniversary, we could talk some shit about other companies, but like they've built a strong company, they built a strong reputation. Like, good for them, man. That's fantastic. Dave, cashed out, got paid. Like, cool, man. That's great. I don't like I
Yeah.
don't. We try really hard to like. We don't hate on other companies that do have their own paths. There's companies like we started next to Blue Bottle in Emeryville. Like
Yeah.
Blue Bottle, we saw Blue Bottle just like get the venture capital funding, explode to like be this national behemoth. It's cool, awesome, man. That's not our path, but like, dude, great, good job, James. Like, crushed it. That's what he wanted to do. Like, so we try to like every company is different. Every company has its own focus, but like we're always happy when businesses succeed. Especially if a business is trying to do something,
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
Whether it's like they're owned by a like the second largest bread conglomerate in the world. So it's like I don't know what they're doing
They,
or not doing, but it's like they seem to be trying. So it's like I'm not going to shit on them for you know what I mean. I just feel like we just try
yeah.
not to be in the business of talking shit because it's just they've done a good thing. They've done good things. So I think it's always
Yeah. No, that makes
positive when
sense.
anyone succeeds.
Yeah, I was just curious. I've buy their product from time to time,
Sure.
and I just like the whole grain and all the extra kind of seeds and stuff they put in there.
Yeah, and they got
But
a
I
super
hadn't
big
dug
presence.
too deep into whether or not they like truly live their mission, or if it was more of like a maybe part of their past, but they're not really living into it anymore. So I was just curious on your take. But I totally respect they're doing what they're doing. They've been around for a while, and hopefully they continue to do great stuff.
Yeah, and also we're like what I say like we're like the band that doesn't listen to other people's records when they're making their own record. Like
Yeah.
I am also like fairly ignorant to like anything outside of my sphere. Like I don't have time to like I'm not on Instagram. You saw my LinkedIn profile. It's like fairly weak. Like,
Yeah.
I have a daughter, I have a wife, we have 100 people here that I have to give a shit about. Like, I don't have time to like I don't have the energy or time in my day to fill it with like shitting on somebody else. I just don't have time to like try to be a good husband, try to be a good father, attempt to be a good CEO and like be a good boss. Like there's no space in that day and I have to work out, be healthy. Like there's just no space in that day to like focus on other like much else.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. They always talk about, comparison is the thief of joy and
Yeah.
a bunch of other phrases, right? But it's not only just, don't spend your time hating on others, but to your point, don't even spend your time being bothered by other people's
No.
paths because you're on your own path. There's not too much you can learn from other people that will truly translate into your life because they're coming at it from a different angle. They've got a different background, they have different experience, they have different resources and so on and so forth. So it's like you see their celebration, whatever, give them a high five, but
Yeah.
you stay up focused on your path because otherwise you're just going to end up
You get
kind of
buried.
miserable and grumpy and bitter
Yeah.
or whatever if you pay
And
too much attention to other people.
you don't know like what's actually true. Like I
Right,
love this
right.
company in Michigan called Zingerman's. Anybody who works at Firebrand has heard me talk about them ad nauseum. Like I just annoy the shit out of everybody here because I talk about Zingerman's all the time. But I remember I went there to visit and talked to the CEO and the owner, and he was like massively accessible, which is insane. He's got like 500 people. But like I was like, man, like you guys have your shit together. You guys are like a well-oiled machine. Like they are like apex company for me. They are top of the heap. And he's like, man, we fuck up all the time. We make mistakes constantly. Like, it's like the way it looks may not be the way it actually is, you know? And like, when he told me that, it was just like almost permission to be like, okay, just back up a little bit. Like, you're fine, you know?
Yeah, totally. That's funny that you say that, because one of my first clients, brands that we built through my agency, Modern Species, is a little bake shop in Madison, Wisconsin called Bloom Bake Shop. And she's getting ready to open up a new restaurant. So I'm working with her on a project right now again. But as we were digging in, she was telling me that she's doing some sort of like leadership development or like a vision mission workshop or something like that at Zingerman's, and was going on about how amazing they are and how they just crush it and they've got everything dialed in. And so I keep hearing about them. I got to look into them a little bit more and see what they're all about.
I'll tell just a brief story. I know that we have time here, but I went to go do the vision class with them. I had broken my foot like 2 weeks before. Never broken anything in my life. I broke 3 bones in my foot doing deliveries. And I was like, shit, how am I going to go to Ann Arbor with this broken foot? I got a boot on, the whole deal. I called them. I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to make it. It's kind of up in the air. I'm not sure. Last minute was like, yeah, I'm going to go. Just go. So I go there, and I got crutches, boot on, the whole thing. I show up, and like, they have name tags. Like, hey, Matt seat, whatever, Gage's seat. They had an extra chair that had a name tag for my foot.
Like, really? That's amazing detail.
Like, so next level service. Like, and that company talks about service. They knew I was coming, knew I had a broken foot, thought, how can we make him comfortable, and put up an extra chair with a name tag for my foot. It was like, it seems so small, but like the level of like the number of steps that they had to go through as a company that has over 500 people to think about my foot and comfort was like mind blowing to me. It's like, that's next level giving a shit. Like,
that's
that
amazing.
Is awesome.
And how do you even? I don't know if that's something you can systemize per se. It's not necessarily on their checklist.
It's in their culture.
Make sure nobody's broken their foot, right? It's like
it's so like so
you just somehow
who they are.
You just like hire the right people who care, or maybe there's training programs that teach you how to empathize and care. But that is pretty next level. That's impressive.
Yeah, it's just, and the thing is with them, it's like the thing I learned about them is like they just are. Like, yes, they have a training program. Yes, they've got stuff on the walls. Their mission, vision, and values is like everywhere. But it's also everywhere in a hotel, and no one gives a shit. Like, it is like in everybody's soul there to be a certain way. And they have done such a good job of distilling their mission down to everybody. Like, I randomly talk to people at all the different places, and it's the amount of similar stories and what they say. It's like, it's amazing. Just like that level of service is who they are. There's no like, yes, they teach it and train it, but like they also just teach that like this is the way to be, and they are.
I mean, they must hire for it, right? It's part of their process to look for qualities in someone. But then if they have that quality, then you can train them on your specific mission and values and all that kind of stuff. But they have to have that seed of giving a shit to begin with.
Yeah.
You can't teach somebody to care, right? So they have to have that base care, and then you teach them how you as a company specifically care for your customers. So
and
I'm
Ari
sure it's somewhere
that.
Baked in their hiring.
Yeah, and Ari models that. There's 500 people there. He knows everybody's name. He's a massive introvert, and like he goes and talks to everybody. Like, it's just insane. Like, he does such a good job of being it, because it's like, what, shit runs downhill. So it's like, if he's not, then who else is going to care? And so he just does such a good job of like embodying what it means to be at Zingerman's, that also is just like an example,
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that just goes to show you how incredible you can, or all the value you can pass on to others when you have good leadership skills. Like, I think a lot of people think I'm the leader, I just need to make financial decisions and whatever. But no, it's like leadership skills are, how you're taking care of people, how you're thinking about them, how you're, customizing your benefits, as we've talked about, how you're hiring, how you're supporting them when you have to fire them. There's just all these little soft, quote unquote, soft skills that go into leadership that I think often get a little bit overlooked in like MBA programs or whatever, where they just teach you to like analyze profitability and stuff. But really, like, that stuff can be learned. It's that leadership quality of really caring and thinking about people that I think is so special. And like when you find that and it's done right and supported by a good structure, like what it sounds like Zingerman's has, it just spreads throughout the company like wildfire, right? So that's a really cool company to emulate. Speaking of which, do you know if those workshops that they do, like the visioning workshops, are those only for other like bakeries, restaurants, or is that something that any business can take?
Yeah, any business. I think you can go there to do it, or they can come to you. I think they're still doing that. They used to pre-pandemic. But yeah, or they have them online. I think they do online classes now, whereas it used to only be in person. Yeah, anybody from any walk of life, any industry, doesn't have to be food. Like it can be whatever. Like they teach it.
Nice. I'll have to put some links to it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so like most companies, I know, you're always probably having to fundraise, right, to get capital to achieve whatever next big goal you're trying to accomplish. So what is it on your to-do list right now with goals? I know you've got that big, beautiful facility. You're talking about opening up another cafe and maybe launching some new products. Like, what's on the horizon? What are you trying to work on right now that you could put some capital to work with?
Yeah, we're trying to fundraise right now to kind of expand out this sliced bread program. So expand out the sliced bread program, bring in some automation, so we can expand some trainings that we're doing. But that's the big push this year, is really kind of how do we blow out that sliced bread line, and grow that and scale that. Still hold on to our core of the hearth breads and pastries, but really kind of expand out that sliced bread line. So we're trying to get that to be, in the next 3 to 5 years, a national product.
Yeah, because right now, a lot of what you're doing is obviously your cafes and stuff, but then also servicing local grocery stores and doing wholesale stuff like selling to other companies that probably goes up in the private label or other things too, right? But so that sliced bread would maybe make it easier to expand nationally, potentially in grocery stores, in theory, because, well, I'm not sure what the difference is of shelf life, but I imagine more like artisan crusty breads don't have as much of a shelf life as like sliced breads, right? So that's part of why it's easier to scale with that.
Yeah, so there are artisan breads are like a day or two. The bigger ones can go 3 or 4 days. But your baguette's a daily situation. But whereas the sliced breads are 28 days. And that's all like natural, kind of organic preservatives. Nothing crazy in there. So we use all natural stuff in there. So, that's a much longer shelf life. So we could expand out, beyond Northern California.
Cool. So that'll help you reach other people, but then also keep your facility running a more, fill the line a little bit more. That's cool. Awesome. So maybe as we wrap up, I like to talk about the future and hopes and dreams and all sorts of stuff. So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
One thing about the industry. I was thinking about this one. I think it's sad how the service industry is viewed as like when the pandemic hit, it was like, oh, essential workers. Like, but these are also the people who get shit on constantly and need to do it with a smile, who get treated with zero to no respect. So I think just a little more respect on the service industry's name, a little bit. Like, I think restaurants are making a dramatic change away from their culture. but I think just a better culture around like honoring what people do in the service industry. Like, I think that would be fantastic. Just people kind of like understanding like when you're paying, you know, $8 for avocado toast, it's like, you know, like you're funding someone's healthcare. You're funding a gap in the system that this business is trying to make up for. You know, you're funding these people being left behind. Like that's, I think people don't understand all the costs that go into things, but yeah, just a little more respect for the food service industry in general and the people who are making the things that you're buying.
Yeah. So do you think the pandemic then, with a lot of the shift towards realizing that these are essential workers doing very important work and a lot of companies standing up to support them, whether that's grants to help keep them in business, or I saw so many brands, like whether it was the frontline workers of hospitals or other kind of essential working kind of industries, there were all these brands stepping up to donate and to provide support and provide protection gear for them and just do whatever they could to try to give back to the service industry. Do you feel like that shift has helped? And do you feel like that shift will continue to stay part of the culture, or will everyone just kind of go back to crapping on the service industry once the pandemic is officially over?
I don't know. I mean, a little bit of both. I think some people will, you know, have a little more respect. I think people continued to crap on the industry throughout that time period. Like running a cafe, like people were almost sometimes like elevated their standards, yet didn't recognize like the reality of providing service when like I can't see your face and like you're behind a glass screen and like you did your order with an app. Yet you're trying to provide good service to that person in a time, like almost like the standards went up, but like the ability to do the job went way down.
Yeah.
So I think that was difficult. I think a lot of people did step up. I don't know. I mean, I hope it continues, but it's hard. I think it's hard in the Bay Area because it's a huge, I mean, like a lot of people here in tech, or they're not in the service industry, and so they don't maybe understand what it's like to be in the service industry. From like maybe they had a waitressing job in high school or in college, but like they're not like an industry worker, and so I think like that was kind of highlighted. It was like that gap between like service level knowledge, was pretty evident. So in the Bay Area, I think it might be a little tough, but hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, people can kind of be a little gentler and kinder to people who are in the service industry.
Well, I think being gentler and kinder in general is good, but yeah, for the service industry, especially because they're out there, especially during a pandemic, putting their lives at risk to make sure you get your avocado toast or whatever it is, right? And through the pandemic, everyone was so much shorter staffed or trying to pivot, trying to still get you what you need, but doing it with all these changing regulations and guidance on COVID, like all this kind of stuff. So I feel like respect is due, obviously. My hunch was going to be maybe people who've worked in the service industry have more respect for the service industry, because I know I did some work in the service industry during and after college, and for me at least, I do whatever I can to make their job easier whenever I'm out at a cafe or in a restaurant or in a retail shop or anything I can do, because I know what they're going through, and I know how tough it is to do that job sometimes. So maybe it's like the people who've never worked there that are the rudest or something like that, because they've got this unreal like expectation. They're like, your job is easy. Like, why don't you just do this thing for me because I'm busy or whatever? But like what they don't realize is they're busy. They're busier than you are probably, and no, that job isn't easy.
Yeah, and then like, I mean, I think from like going back like to the earlier part of the discussion about personal experience, like my mom was a nurse. Like she literally gave her life for nursing. She died of hepatitis C before they had the cure for it. Like she died of hepatitis C that she got from getting pricked from a needle on the job as a nurse. She like ruined her back forever, because she got like trying to like hold somebody down to give them a shot, the guy like kicked her across the room and like ruined her back. Like she gave her life for her service industry. So I think that's kind of just in my, like, being in the service industry is like very ingrained in who I am.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. I think maybe to achieve your magic wand outcome, I have a proposal. We'll see if we can pass this through the government. But I feel like if everyone would be required to spend at least some time working in the service industry and required to travel internationally, and that should be funded by the government or something like that, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, if you learn to appreciate different cultures and different approaches to life, and that you don't know everything and there's not one way to do things, aka like traveling internationally, and if you learn what it's like to, serve others and give good service and then be, yelled at or spit on or something like that in exchange, I think those two things would make people a lot more kind and respectful human beings. And then they could go on to do, other things, whether that's stay in the service industry or go off on some other career path as better humans. But because a lot of people don't do those two things, I think they have a little bit more narrow mindset and don't understand what it's like to be in other people's shoes.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%.
So I'll just start writing letters to Congress or something like that, see if we can get some programs funded.
Be nice. Totally. Yeah.
The Be Nice bill. Yeah. Cool. Well, I have probably kept you long enough at the moment, and you've got a lot of stuff to do. So I appreciate you carving some time out of your schedule to share a little bit more about your story. And again, I just really appreciate your focus on putting that mission first and just trying to make the world a better place through your business. I think it's amazing, and I'm sure all your employees would agree. And I look forward to kind of continuing watching the journey and seeing those sliced breads end up in all the stores across the U.S. So we can do more good with better food.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Matt or his company, go to firebrandbread.com. Subscribe to our podcast and YouTube channel for more innovator interviews, expert advice, and leadership discussions. If you like this episode, leave a heart, thumbs up, or review, and share it with your colleagues. As an ever-evolving show, we also love feedback, so send us your thoughts or ideas for who we should talk to next to evolve@modernspecies.com.